Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am very pleased to have Venchele Saint Dic as my guest. And let me tell you about Venchele. She is the author of Journey to Redemption and Faith in the Amazon best-selling book, Passport to Self-Discovery, Volume 2. She is working on her DrPH, which is a Doctorate of Public Health Leadership. Venchele is also the founder of MESFAMI, that's MESFAMI Care Inc. She has demonstrated leadership and innovation in public health, health equity, communication, public outreach, social inclusion, and diversion, plus many others. Her writings include subjects on public health, resilience, communication skills, assertiveness, personal development, mindfulness, emotional intelligence, travel, community health, mental health, relationships, culture, race, customer service, and health systems. She doesn't know it. It doesn't need to be known, I'll tell you. She has articles published in the Good Men Project, the National Medical Association, Harness Magazine, YMK, the Creative Guru, Black News, the Minority Business Finance Scoop, the Above Ground Railroad, Black Owned and Operated, Greater Diversity News, Southeast Queens Scoop, Black News Zone, the Peace Corps Press Release, DMV Daily, Black State, Thrive Global, Gratitude Circle, Medium, LinkedIn, and the newsletter of the Peace Corps Senegal, Simmons College, and Friends of the Library of Montgomery County. My goodness, girl, do you just write all day long?
I do. I love to write.
I know it's just such a great accolade to all of your, they're not going to publish it if it's not good. So there you go.
Yeah.
I thought that the great theme for today should be behind the scenes, the making of a writing coach. And who best to talk to us by this prolific writer that we have with us tonight, Venchele Saint Dic. Venchele,
Thank
so
you.
nice.
Thank you for having me.
All righty. So Venchele, the simple, easy question to start, I always use, where do you call home? Where do you live?
So I'm originally based in Maryland right now. But when I think about my journey, I've lived in different places, different spaces. And I think that when I think of the word home, I think of it as a conceptual space where creativity and knowledge intersect. And I can say that for me, when I think of home, I've never really been able to pinpoint it to a specific place, because I think all of these different places and the different people I've met along the way have made me who I am today. Yeah. So I would say that home to me is anything that, or any place that really helps me harness like constant learning and sharing, and where my ideas are nurtured and grown. That's how I would answer that question.
I almost, in your voice, your tone, I hear like a Brooklyn Puerto Rican.
I get that all the time. I was born in the States, but I grew up in the Caribbean. My family's from Haiti, Martinique, and France.
Ah,
I'm a native French speaker. And so sometimes people will think that, oh, it's a Brooklyn accent, but it's really a Caribbean accent, it's a French
yes.
accent. And also maybe it's because I've lived in Boston for quite some time too.
Ah, could be, could be. Yes.
Yes.
So the Caribbean is there. And um, just, I loved your definition of home because it is so true. Every place we've been makes us who we are.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. I know you didn't come out of the womb or kindergarten writing books, but what led you to become a writing coach?
I think I would say at a very young age, like what my parents did is just instill in me this love for reading.
Mm.
And I think that's what propelled me, into, just becoming like a full-fledged writing aficionado. But when I think about my journey to becoming a writing coach, I think it may have been driven by a passion for storytelling and a desire to empower others in expressing their own narratives. Because I think that as a woman, when I have been given the opportunity to work in different settings, I think sometimes our voices can be muted. And that also fueled my desire to say, enough is enough. Like, I think that women in particular need to take back their power, reclaim their time, as I like to say it. And that's the reason why I decided to become a writing coach, because I could tell, I witnessed firsthand by working with my clients, the transformative power of well-crafted words and how that could land, to people, telling, where they come from and how their cultures or how their upbringing molded them into the person that they are today. Like they were reshaping the narrative of whatever topic people were exposed to in the media. And I think that's always important, reshaping these narratives so that the stories are being told by the people who are actually going through those challenges.
Yeah, so true. So I had a quote once talking about, not comparing yourself to someone else's chapter 20 when you're on chapter 1. And so how do you approach coaching individuals that are different stages in their writing journey?
I think despite where writers are on their writing journey, I think that coaching writers at various stages requires like a tailored approach. So typically for beginners, I really focus on building their confidence and foundational skills. For intermediate writers, trying to think here, I think they mostly need help refining their style and voice. And then for advanced writers, they typically will seek me out. Actually, if nothing else, I think for advanced writers, they're sort of behind the wheel and asking me for guidance on more nuanced aspects of storytelling and publishing. But overall, regardless of the stage they find themselves in, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, my focus is always trying to understand their goals and challenges to provide personalized support. And then also just to help them hone in on the craft of writing instead of sort of thinking, okay, like I need to write for a specific audience. Yes, we know that's in the background and that for marketing purposes, you will need to say to someone who you want to read your book. However, in the writing process, that shouldn't be the main concern. It's really getting your thoughts out and saying it in a way that resonates with me. Because I always, when I work with people, I always tell them I'm part of that audience as well. Like I will be buying your book as well. And if it doesn't make sense to you, if you're not satisfied with the product, then you know that I'm also going to pick up on it as a writer too. I mean, as a reader, as a fellow reader.
And I think that's important to remember. a lot of times people, the writers, even if it's somebody that's just doing like a TED talk or a presentation, sometimes their why is not as much that they're trying to transform someone else as their purpose for doing it. Sometimes it's just because they need to tell their story, that they have this hole, and the only way they can fill it is to share what their story is. And so when you're doing that, I think your audience is you.
And can you explain a little bit more about the hole? Like what causes the hole?
Yeah, that's unfulfilled dreams sometimes. Sometimes it's a hurt, a pain. Sometimes it's wanting to leave a legacy. And sometimes it's just that that your story will help someone somewhere. But you don't want to go to your grave without having told that story.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And now that I think about it, I don't know where I saw this quote, but they were saying that the cemetery is sort of an untapped library.
Yeah.
Because we find people there who have not had a chance to tell their story.
Mm-hmm. So, but they had a great story to be told. When I meet so many people, and I remember two in particular, but they were telling the story of, one was a woman who was really his grandmother, who raised him because his mother rejected him. And his story just was so wonderful in understanding all of these different kinds of personalities and opportunities and rising and falling. And it was just so wonderful. And I always tell people, if you can't write your story, let me interview you for about 4 or 5 podcasts, and you'll have your story. You'll have it written for you, because it needs to be told. And another one was, his family was a sharecropper, and the whole thing of that life. And he's my age. He's in his 60s, so it's not that long ago. and people don't think about the fact of sharecroppers and things like that. And even though that kind of still goes on with migrant workers and things today. But in his heart of hearts, he knew he wanted to tell that story, but he didn't feel brave enough to tell it himself.
And that typically happens when, like, during the writing process. Because sometimes people don't understand that when you're writing, you have to unpack all the hurt. And I have found that it is hard to put pen to paper if you have unhealed issues that you have not sought help for. And so I'm glad that you shared this with me, because I can think of instances where I had to tell some of the people that I worked with, to just take some time, in between the writing sessions, and just to reflect. Sometimes you just need to sit with the feelings, and then from there, in the stillness, the words will come. But if you're always in the go, go, go mentality, you have this, I have to get this done. I have to write 3 or 5 pages. Sometimes it doesn't work. It may work for some people, but for those who have these stories, they need to sit with the hurt for a moment before going back into this writing process.
And that's specifically why I decided to add to, my opportunities coaching, is to just say, okay, let's just have a conversation. Because the one gentleman that I was talking about was raised by his grandmother. He said, at the end of this hour conversation we had, he said, I've never told that story to anyone. And I thought, just think how wonderful this would be if we can meet with each other a few more times and you really unpack this, you have such a great story to tell. And so, I recognize that there are people that are intimidated by writing, and they might not even seek a coach like you. But if I can get them a transcript and then say, here, Venchele, take them and mold them into a great author, that sounds wonderful.
And it's great that you've created that opportunity for this individual, because it's half the battle.
Yeah.
You provide them with an outline in a way.
Well, and again, it doesn't feel like they're sitting down trying to write a book. All they're doing is like answering questions that come in natural conversation from an inquisitive mind that is intrigued by what they're saying and their story. And,
absolutely.
And that really kind of fuels the flame or the fire to be able to come up with all of those memories that you forgot that you had.
True. I agree.
So we're talking about getting started, but you're started and now you have writer's block, or you're putting off writing that next paragraph. How do you help them?
I typically help combat writer's block, or in procrastination, I should say, by encouraging maybe setting small, achievable goals, and then maintaining a regular writing schedule.
Nice.
Just because I think that when you start writing, life happens. Life doesn't stop because you've decided to take an hour out of your busy schedule to write. And so what I have experienced just working through Pathway Coach Writing is sometimes there's a resistance, for people to realize that they're not going to have 5 hours allotted in a given day. And so that's the reason why I'm being very careful to say I have shared, whether people implement that or not, is, again, subject to multiple interpretations, but I always tell them I always encourage people to set small and achievable goals, whether it's just spending 15 minutes, right? You block out 15 minutes in your schedule and all you do is write. And I know 15 minutes doesn't sound like a long time, but if you do it consistently in a week, it adds up. And the joy of me even sharing this with you is because now we have apps like Scribd and many others that I care to mention in this conversation that allows you to do that. And then there's also this other app that I use to time myself for 15 minutes every day for my writing schedule. It's called the Pomodoro technique. And what it does, it just, again, it's sort of like a timer. And then you set it up for 15 minutes. For about 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. And then it shuts off after the 15 minutes is done. And so that's what I've been sharing with my clients. I would say also mindfulness practices and creative exercises can also be beneficial in unlocking creativity. And I also think that against the backdrop of all of these exercises and techniques that I'm sharing with you, I think it's important for people to create a non-judgmental space where they feel comfortable exploring and overcoming their barriers. And sometimes one of the ways to do that is maybe find a community of writers in the area that you can join and that you can talk about, your writer's block. And then find out from them different strategies that they're using, to combat procrastination as well. Because because what I share with them, at least with my clients, I always have to tell them I'm just one voice. And they missing out on the voices and the opinions of other people within their own backyard. So I think finding these kindred souls is very important as you're, again, writing.
Very good. So what do you think is the most important skill that a writer should develop?
based on what I've shared thus far with you, I would say that the most crucial skill for a writer is the ability to connect with their audience. I think this doesn't just involve mastering the language and the storytelling techniques that we've discussed earlier, but also developing empathy to understand and resonate with readers' emotions and experiences. Because like I've said earlier, if it doesn't make sense, if the story plot does not make sense to the writer, it's not going to make sense to the reader.
Yeah, very true.
So.
And how do you balance the need to have authentic connections with being able to practically network with your group, your business context? You have to, I think that authenticity has to come out in your writing.
I would say that for me, I have to tell you, I struggle with transactional relationships. I'm not good with that. Just because I think that balancing authenticity with networking involves being genuine in interactions while understanding the mutual benefits of professional relationships. I also think, now that I'm really processing the question, it's also finding common ground and then building connections that are based on shared interests and values rather than purely transactional motives. If nothing else, from my experience, networking should feel like a natural extension of one's passion and expertise and not a forced business strategy.
So whenever you're in, maybe your audience is a bunch of other authors, one of the things that, like for us as coaches, that we have millions of coaches everywhere, and I think it's important that you need to stand out in the crowd with your message of what you're saying, and that's where the authenticity, the vulnerability, the willingness to share a pain and a solution really comes in handy.
I do too. And I think also it's a bigger discussion of making sure, like even when we're talking about standing out in the crowd, but what does that look like from a publisher standpoint? Because whoever you share your story with, whoever is going to publish it, in a way becomes integrated in that story. How are they viewing it? How are they marketing it? Because that's one of the common pitfalls, the overgeneralization. And I think it's so critically important, and I can't stress that enough, is to really make sure that authors voice out their concerns during the publishing process. Because once it's published, I mean, you can always go back and say, hey, oops, I made a mistake. we need to call this back so I can make some corrections. You can do that. However, I think that it's so critically important for authors to be participants rather than observers in the publishing process. I mean, yes, it's all great. You have this publishing deal. You have someone who's interested in publishing it, but you have to pay attention on how they're going to market it. Because that's going to make a difference in terms of the audience that you attract and the people that you leave behind.
Right. It's time now for rapid fire. So what are some common misconceptions about writing?
Some common misconceptions about writing typically involve with authors thinking that their content will resonate with diverse audiences. And I think like it's a bigger discussion on understanding cultural sensitivity and localization, like in the market expansion. And sometimes it's a hit and sometimes it's a miss. And I think that's when people really need to pay attention to how they are portraying their characters, and then also really reflecting on the rationale on why they've written that plot, for these specific individuals within the book. So it's sort of like you're doing an analysis within an analysis. You're analyzing your characters, you're developing them, you're placing them into this story, but then you always have to think about why.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be a foreign book, if you're going to introduce that concept, you have to also ask yourself, am I failing to research local customs?
Yeah.
And what can I do to change that?
Mm-hmm. That's so true. And it's not just in books, you are a prolific article writer, and those publications can be seen around the world too. But if you even go to another step, like for me, when I present to a global audience, not everybody is going to understand or agree. And again, knowing the culture, knowing what to say, how to say it is really important. It is time now for us to go to share my screen so that I can show you the contact information. If you are just listening, you know the drill. Go get that paper or pencil so you can write down Venchele's information. So if you are going to just visit her website, the website is https://pathwaycoachwriting.com. Again, that's pathwaywritingcoach.com. On Facebook, if you just search for Venchele, Venchile, you'll find her. But there are a bunch of other things a screenshot can give you. LinkedIn is Venchele Saint Dic MPH candidate 704-80811. Again, search Venchele Saint Dic and you will find her. Promise you. Instagram, she's at Venchele Saint Dic, and Pathways or at Pathway Coach Writing. So those two locations. Again, grab a screenshot. It will be available on my website, defindyourleadershipconfidence.com, as well as YouTube. Whenever you view this video, you will see it again. All right, and Twitter, she's Venchele D, and again, that's a capital V and a capital D, Venchele D. And Venchele, if you would just let them know, what are some things they'll find when they go to pathwaycoachwriting.com?
So when you go to pathwaycoachwriting.com, again, you will see a set of services that I provide, but also I have created some free resources. I think one mainly that helps authors define their core values. And so they will find it under the gift page. And then there's a wealth of resources. I've also published some articles. They also will see previous interviews that I've had. And it's not specific to Pathway Coach Writing because my background is in public health. And so I talk extensively on public health issues as well. So that's what they would find
awesome.
if they visit my website.
And then as we see, she's asking you to also check out her LinkedIn page. So make sure you do that. Follow her on LinkedIn, follow her on Facebook, and again, Instagram and Twitter. So Venchele, thank you so much for being such a great guest, giving some really wonderful tips for people that maybe are writers already and are stuck, or people who are just wanting to dip their toe into writing, or people that are terrified, and maybe you could build up their confidence to be able to just get writing. I think one of the fastest things for me, and surprising because I never thought about writing, and then during 2021, at the time of COVID, one of my peers, after an interview, said, "Hey, I would love for you to be part of my book. Can you write a chapter?" So I wrote my 2,500 words in like 4 hours. It just like flowed out of me. And I thought, oh, okay. So now just this week, I'm launching my fifth collaborative book.
Wow.
The Game Changer, you see it on the back over there.
Yes, I can see it.
And I wanted to let everyone know that, and tomorrow is not tomorrow, on the 15th of November is a big day for Venchele because it is her birthday. So let's all just send her happy birthday to that Facebook on the 15th. And if it's past the 15th, then give her a belated happy birthday.
Thank you.
And as always, thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest.
Thank you so much.
I remind everyone that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.